I could still remember the butterflies in my stomach as I pulled into the parking lot of Oak Ridge High School. The old brick building looked smaller than I remembered, but the memories it held seemed to have grown larger with time. 10 years had passed since I'd walked these halls as a student, and now I was back for our high school reunion. The evening sun cast a golden glow over the football field where we'd spent countless Friday nights cheering on our team, the Oak Ridge Owls. Our small town of Millfield hadn't changed much in the decade I'd been gone. The same family-owned businesses lined Main Street. The same gazebo stood in the town square where we used to hang out after school. As I sat in my car, I couldn't help but wonder who I'd see tonight. Would they recognize me? Would I recognize them? So much had changed since graduation. I'd left Millfield to attend college in Boston, where I eventually settled into a comfortable life as a graphic designer for a marketing firm. I had a nice apartment, good friends, and a life I was proud of. But there was always something missing. A connection to my past, to the person I used to be before adult responsibilities took over. Let me tell you about myself. My name is Alex Mitchell. In high school, I was what you might call a middle-of-the-road student, not quite popular enough to be invited to all the parties, but well-liked enough to have a solid group of friends. I played baseball, worked on the yearbook committee, and spent most weekends at the local movie theater with friends. After graduation, I'd kept in touch with a few classmates through social media, but those connections had faded over time, reduced to occasional likes on photos and obligatory birthday wishes. The truth is, I'd been debating whether to attend this reunion for weeks. Part of me was curious to see how everyone had turned out, but another part was anxious about facing the past. High school wasn't always easy for me. I was still figuring myself out back then, still coming to terms with my sexuality in a town that wasn't exactly known for its progressive views. I'd come out to my friends in college, where it felt safer, but most of my high school classmates had no idea. Would tonight be the night I finally showed up as my authentic self? With a deep breath, I stepped out of my car and made my way toward the gymnasium, which had been transformed for the occasion. A banner reading, "Welcome back class of 2013, hung over the entrance, and I could hear the muffled sounds of music and laughter from inside. I paused at the door, straightened my blue button-down shirt, and ran a hand through my short brown hair before pushing the door open. The gym was decorated with blue and silver streamers, our school colors, and round tables covered in white tablecloths were scattered throughout the space. A DJ booth was set up in one corner, playing hits from our high school days. I immediately recognized "Get Lucky" by Daft Punk, which had been our prom theme song. The familiar tune brought a smile to my face as I scanned the room. People were already mingling, holding plastic cups of punch that I suspected had been spiked, just like at our high school dances. Some faces I recognized immediately, while others took a moment to place. There was Imogen, our class president, now a successful attorney according to her Facebook page. And there was Derek Thompson, star quarterback, who seemed to have maintained his athletic build even after all these years. "Alex? Alex Mitchell, is that you?" a voice called out. I turned to see Melissa Rodriguez, my lab partner from AP Chemistry, approaching with a wide smile. She looked almost exactly the same, except her once-long hair was now cut into a stylish bob. "Melissa, it's so good to see you," I said, genuinely happy to see a friendly face. We hugged and fell into easy conversation about our lives post-graduation. She was now a pharmacist, married with a 2-year-old daughter. As we caught up, more classmates joined our circle, and I found myself relaxing into the nostalgia of it all. But even as I chatted and laughed with old friends, my eyes kept scanning the room, looking for one person in particular. I wasn't even sure if he would show up. The last I'd heard, Jason Williams had moved to California after college. We'd been inseparable as kids, growing up on the same street, riding bikes together, building forts in the woods behind our houses. But something had changed in high school. We drifted apart, ended up in different social circles, and by senior year, we barely spoke to each other. And then I saw him, standing by the refreshment table, a plastic cup in hand, looking somehow both exactly the same and completely different. Jason Williams. His dark hair was shorter now, styled in a way that suggested professional success. He'd filled out since high school, his shoulders broader under his gray blazer. But his smile, that was exactly as I remembered it, slightly crooked with a dimple in his right cheek. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. He looked surprised, then pleased, his smile widening as he raised his cup in acknowledgement. I excused myself from my conversation and made my way toward him, heart pounding in my chest. "Alex Mitchell," he said as I approached, his voice deeper than I remembered. I was hoping you'd be here. Jason, I replied, suddenly feeling like an awkward teenager again. It's been a long time. He pulled me into a hug, and I was enveloped in the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. Too long, he said as he pulled back. You look great. So do you, I said, meaning it. California must be treating you well. He laughed, the sound sending a jolt of familiarity through me. How did you know I was in California? Facebook stalking, I admitted with a grin. The modern way to keep tabs on old friends. Fair enough, he said. Though I'm back in the Northeast now. Boston, actually. I moved there about 6 months ago for work. Boston? That's where I live, I said, surprised by the coincidence. How have we not run into each other? It's a big city, he shrugged. But maybe it's fate that we're both here tonight. There was something in the way he looked at me that made my stomach flip. Had his eyes always been that shade of green? I'd forgotten how they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. As we stood there, the DJ switched to a slower song, Yellow by Coldplay. Jason and I both laughed at the same time. Remember when this was your favorite song? He asked. You used to play it on repeat in your room until your mom would bang on the wall and tell you to pick something else. I was touched that he remembered. I can't believe you recall that. That was what, 8th grade? 7th, he corrected. The year we built that treehouse in your backyard and your dad got so mad because we used his good tools without asking. The memory hit me with unexpected force. Summer days spent hammering nails into planks of wood, Jason's tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth as he concentrated on not hitting his thumb. The pride we felt when we finally had a place that was just ours, away from parents and sisters and the rest of the world. We spent every day in that treehouse that summer, I said softly, reading comics and trading baseball cards. And making plans for the future, Jason added. You were going to be a famous artist, and I was going to be an astronaut. Well, I'm a graphic designer, so not quite a famous artist, I said with a laugh. And I'm an aerospace engineer, so not quite an astronaut, but close, he replied. I looked at him with surprise. Really? That's amazing, Jason. You actually followed through on your dream. He shrugged modestly. In a way, I design components for satellites now. It's not as glamorous as being in space, but I love it. As we continued to catch up, the years between us seemed to melt away. We moved from the refreshment table to a quieter corner of the gym, where we could hear each other better. Jason told me about his time at MIT, his job in San Francisco, and his recent transfer to the Boston office of his company. I shared stories about my college years, my struggle to find a job in my field, and the satisfaction I now found in my work. But there was a question nagging at me when I wasn't sure I should ask. Finally, after a lull in the conversation, I gathered my courage. Jason, what happened to us in high school? We were so close, and then suddenly we weren't. His expression grew serious, and he looked down at his drink. I've thought about that a lot over the years, he said quietly. I think I was scared. Scared? Of what? He looked up at me, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that took my breath away. Of how I felt about you. The world seemed to stop for a moment. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. What do you mean? Jason took a deep breath. Alex, I was struggling with my sexuality in high school. I didn't understand what I was feeling, and it terrified me. You were my best friend, and I started to realize that what I felt for you was more than friendship. But I didn't know how to handle it, so I pulled away. I stared at him, stunned. All those years, I'd thought I'd done something wrong, that I'd somehow driven him away. And all along, he'd been going through the same confusion I had been. Jason, I started, but was interrupted by Imogen tapping on a microphone at the front of the gym. Attention, everyone. It's time for our class photo. Can we all gather by the Oak Ridge Owls banner? The moment was broken as people began moving toward the designated photo area. Jason and I joined the crowd, standing side by side but not continuing our conversation. The photographer arranged us in rows, with the shorter classmates in front and taller ones in back. Jason and I ended up in the same row, just a few people apart. Everyone say, "Go Owls," the photographer called, and we all obediently repeated the phrase as the camera flashed. As the group dispersed, Jason leaned close to me. Can we go somewhere quieter to talk? There's so much more I want to say to you. I nodded, my heart racing. The courtyard behind the gym should be empty. We slipped out through a side door into the cool night air. The courtyard was a small enclosed space with benches and planters, where students used to eat lunch on nice days. It was empty now, lit only by the moon and the soft glow from the windows of the gym. We sat on a bench, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. "I need to tell you something too," I finally said. "I'm gay, Jason. I didn't come out until college, but I think I always knew. And I think I had feelings for you too back then. But like you, I was scared and confused." Jason turned to face me, his expression a mixture of surprise and something else. "Hope, maybe." "All this time," he said softly, "we were both hiding from each other. And from ourselves," I added. He reached out and took my hand, his fingers warm against mine. "I've thought about you over the years, you know. Wondered where you were, what you were doing. If you were happy." "I am happy," I said. "But seeing you tonight, it's like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." The music from the gym was faintly audible in the courtyard, a slow song I didn't recognize. Jason stood up, still holding my hand, and pulled me gently to my feet. "Dance with me?" he asked, a vulnerability in his voice that made my heart ache. Without a word, I stepped closer to him. His arms encircled my waist, and I rested my hands on his shoulders. We swayed slowly to the distant music, our bodies moving together as if we'd done this 1,000 times before. "I never danced with a guy in high school," Jason murmured. "I was too afraid of what people would think." "Me too," I admitted. "I went to prom with Lily Anderson because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But I spent the whole night wishing things could be different." Jason's hand moved to the small of my back, drawing me closer. "Things are different now," he said softly. We were so close now that I could feel his breath on my face. Time seemed to slow down as his gaze dropped to my lips, a question in his eyes. I answered by closing the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that was 10 years in the making. His lips were soft and warm, and he tasted faintly of the punch from inside. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but then his hand came up to cup my cheek, and I melted into him. Every nerve in my body felt alive, electric with the realization that this was Jason, my childhood best friend, the boy I'd secretly had feelings for all those years ago. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. Jason rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. "I've wanted to do that since we were 16, he whispered. "Worth the wait?" I asked, a smile in my voice. He opened his eyes, looking at me with such tenderness that it made my chest ache. "Definitely worth the wait." We stayed in the courtyard for what felt like hours, talking, laughing, and yes, kissing some more. We shared stories from the years we'd been apart, filling in the gaps in each other's lives. I told him about my first boyfriend in college, the heartbreak that followed, and the journey to accepting myself. He told me about his own struggles with coming out to his conservative family, his failed relationships, and his eventual peace with who he was. "I never told anyone about my feelings for you," Jason admitted as we sat close together on the bench, his arm around my shoulders. "Not even my therapist. It felt too precious, too personal. I wrote about you in my journal," I confessed. "Pages and pages about the boy next door who broke my heart without even knowing it." He winced. "I'm sorry, Alex. If I could go back and do things differently." I silenced him with a gentle kiss. "Don't apologize. We weren't ready then. Maybe we needed these years apart to become the people we are now." As the night grew later, we reluctantly decided it was time to return to the reunion before people noticed our absence. Before we went back inside, Jason pulled me close for one more kiss. "I don't want this night to end," he said against my lips. "It doesn't have to," I replied. "We're both in Boston now, remember?" His smile lit up his entire face. "Can I see you tomorrow? For dinner, maybe?" "I'd like that," I said, feeling a happiness I hadn't experienced in a long time. We exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet the next evening. Then, with one final kiss, we walked back into the gym, where the reunion was starting to wind down. We rejoined our classmates, standing close enough that our hands occasionally brushed, sharing secret smiles whenever our eyes met. As the night came to a close and people began saying their goodbyes, Jason and I walked out to the parking lot together. We stopped beside my car, reluctant to part ways. "Tonight wasn't at all what I expected," I said, leaning against my car door. "In the best possible way," Jason agreed, stepping closer. "You know, I almost didn't come tonight. I was afraid of facing the past, of seeing people who knew me before I came out. But now I'm so glad I did." "Me too," I said softly. "It's funny how life works out sometimes. All those years of wondering what happened between us, and now here we are." He reached out to brush a strand of hair from my forehead, his touch gentle. "Here we are," he echoed. "And I don't plan on disappearing from your life again, Alex Mitchell." "Good," I said, "because I'm not letting you go this time, Jason Williams." He kissed me one more time under the stars in the parking lot of our old high school, a perfect ending to a night of unexpected beginnings. The drive back to my hotel was a blur of happiness and anticipation. I couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop replaying every moment with Jason in my mind. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Childhood friends reunited after years apart, a kiss behind the gym, the promise of something more. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jason. Last night wasn't a dream, was it? Because if it was, I don't want to wake up. I smiled as I typed my reply. Not a dream. I have the butterflies in my stomach to prove it. His response came quickly. Can't wait to see you tonight. I've already made reservations at that Italian place on Newberry Street. 7 p.m.? Perfect. I texted back. It's a date. A date with Jason Williams. If you had told my high school self that this would happen one day, I never would have believed it. But sometimes life has a way of bringing people back together when the time is right. As I packed my bag to check out of the hotel, I found the reunion program I'd stuffed in my pocket the night before. On the cover was our senior class motto, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." I hadn't thought much of it at 18, but now, at 28, those words resonated with me in a way they never had before. Because sometimes, dreams do come true. Sometimes, the boy you loved from afar comes back into your life when you least expect it. And sometimes, a high school reunion can be the beginning of something beautiful, rather than just a nostalgic trip down memory lane. That evening, as I sat across from Jason at a candlelit table, watching him talk animatedly about his work, I felt a sense of rightness that I'd never experienced before. This was where I was meant to be, with the person I was meant to be with. It had just taken us a little longer to find our way to each other. What are you thinking about? Jason asked, noticing my contemplative expression. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. I'm thinking that sometimes the longest journeys lead us right back to where we started. And I'm thinking that I'm really, really glad I went to that reunion. He squeezed my hand, his eyes full of promise. Me too, Alex. Me too. In the months that followed, Jason and I built a relationship that was both new and familiar at the same time. We explored Boston together, discovering favorite restaurants and hidden parks. We introduced each other to our friends, who teased us about our high school sweethearts reunited story. We spent lazy Sundays in my apartment, reading the newspaper and making pancakes, or at his place, watching movies with his cat curled between us. It wasn't always perfect. We had arguments and misunderstandings, as all couples do. We had to learn each other's habits and quirks, had to figure out how to communicate effectively. But underlying everything was a foundation of friendship that had been built when we were children, a connection that had survived 10 years of separation. 6 months after the reunion, Jason took me back to Millfield for a weekend. We visited our old neighborhood, stood in front of our childhood homes, and even found the remains of our treehouse in my parents' backyard, weathered and unsafe to climb, but still standing after all these years. Just like us, Jason said as we looked up at the structure. A little worse for wear, but still standing. That night, as we lay in bed in our hotel room, Jason propped himself up on one elbow and looked down at me with serious eyes. I love you, Alex, he said simply. I think I've loved you since we were kids, even if I didn't understand it then. My heart felt too big for my chest as I reached up to touch his face. I love you too, Jason. I always have, in some way. He kissed me then, a kiss full of promise and future and all the things we'd once been too afraid to want. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that take the longest to write. Our high school reunion had been meant to celebrate the past, but for Jason and me, it had given us something much more valuable, a future, together. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms that night, I thought about how life rarely goes according to plan, how the paths we think we should take aren't always the ones that lead us to happiness, how sometimes the most unexpected detours bring us exactly where we need to be, and how sometimes a kiss behind the gym can be the beginning of the greatest love story of your life. Total_char_count, 26,589.